I have a business interest in Bar Heisenberg Proprietary Limited that is located in the top of town at 164 Brisbane Street, Ipswich. I propose to deal with this matter by leaving the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ficken. Thank you for your openness there. Before we proceed, just noting the flow of the agenda here, noting that I propose that we move around items 10 and 11. That way, when we go through the agenda, items 10, 12, 13 and 14 are dealt with last, so both Councillors Ficken and Councillors Madsen can go on and continue their day job outside here.
Thank you.
So I'd like to move that motion. Do I have a seconder for that?
Second that.
Councillor Ficken seconds that. I'll open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion? Yes. Okay. Those in favour, raise your hand. I'll do a division. So Councillor Milligan, Councillor Kunzelman, Councillor Fickner, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Tully, Councillor Johnny, Councillor Madsen, Councillor Ireland and myself. In the affirmative, therefore there was no negative or no. Thank you very much. We'll now want to move on to...
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
I do have an item that I
Oh, sorry, are there
want
any other
to
topics? Yes.
advise yourself as Chair and the committee with regards to item 3, proposed new trustee permit over reserve for recreation purposes, Anzac Park Sports and Recreation Club Incorporated, 1 Mill Street, Rosewood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a conflict of interest. I just need to advise committee that I am a member of the RSL sub-branch at Rosewood that meets at that location. I don't acknowledge or see that there is a conflict there. I'm an ordinary member, and just so that committee is aware.
Thank you very much. So if we could note that.
And it could I move that that be noted in the minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Milligan. Now move on to agenda item 1, which is the RMPC Contract 25. We can see that up on the screen as well. The recommendation, there were 2 recommendations there. So we can get some more information. May I ask for someone to move this, and then I'll call up, then I think we'll call up the General Manager to discuss this contract. Thank you. Councillor Kunzelman has moved this motion. I'll now open up for discussion. We have the General Manager, Charlie Dill, please arrive. Now, Charlie, Mr Dill will need a gooseneck.
We need a second.
Oh, no, we don't have to have a seconder. We don't. You just have to have it moved. Actually, do you mind if we move the microphone up, just so, yeah, for social distancing? Thank you. Do you mind just your name and position, please?
Sure. Charlie Dill, General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment Department. Morning, councillors, Mayor. So item 1 is in respect to the RMPC contract, which is the road maintenance performance contract between Ipswich City Council and the Department of Transport and Main Roads. This is to undertake routine maintenance on selected main roads road network. The proposal is that we enter into a contract for 2 years, so 2021 and 21-22, to the total value of $6,621,369. This contract is a schedule of rates contract for all the different work activities required to undertake the maintenance. It's basically provisional quantities, therefore they include estimated quantities against the rates to give us this dollar value. However, there is discretionary discretion applied to the quantities required based on service levels and interventions. So the recommendations is that, Council enters into the contract with Main Roads for 2 years at that value, and that the CEO is authorised to negotiate the execution of the contract under the Local Government Act, Section 13(3).
Thank you, Mr Dill.
Thanks.
I'll now open up for discussion. Would any of the councillors like to ask a question of Mr Dill? Oh, wait, we'll just wait for a gooseneck. So, so through the Mayor, Councillor Doyle.
Just wondering a little bit more background to the original contract and relationship. Have there been any issues around our performance?
Yeah, through the Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor. To date, we've been operating under this contract with Main Roads for approximately 24 years. There remains a positive working relationship, professional working relationship. We've met the intervention levels and the performance under the agreement. There hasn't been any disputes that I'm aware of. No contractual issues to note.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other? May I ask, Mr. Gill, this contract, the TMR contract of the council, has it been a profitable contract for the council? Council
does make a small margin or a margin from the contract, just like would be expected from any other contractor to Main Roads. So there is minimal risk to council.
Okay. What opportunities exist to grow this or similar contracts to address that backlog of defective and roads, and how do we can improve our roads to generate more revenue for the council?
It's really dependent on the state government's funding provisions. And from time to time, towards the end of the financial year, if funding is available, the state or Department of Transport Main Roads will redirect additional funding to pick up on some of those backlog items.
What would you state would be the main risks of this project, of our signing this contract, sorry? Or if we do proceed?
I think if we do proceed, it's really our ability to maintain the service and our obligations under the contract. So ensuring that we have the resources to undertake the works and the competency to do so.
And what were some of the benefits to the organisation? And my understanding is that it sort of secures employment for our local workforce and things like that. Are you able to speak to that?
It does employ 2 to 3 professional officers full-time, a full work crew full-time, and numerous contractors to undertake the various works. So it does provide employment opportunity. There is that margin for council for some revenue, and it also provides council and the state to ensure that all the road networks, state and council's road networks, are working effectively and cost effectively for funds being spent wisely.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Dill? No, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councillor Kunzelman did move this. Do I have someone who will second this? Councillor Milligan? Anyone wish to speak for it? Against? Okay, I'll move it to a vote. All those in favour, and I'll call a division. Go around the room. Councillor Milligan, Councillor Kunzelman, Councillor Fechner. Actually, I'll go around. It's unanimous. Every single councillor has voted in support of this contract. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 2, which is the South East Queensland Fire and Biodiversity Consortium annual contribution. We have the recommendation up on the screen. Do I have someone who will move this motion so we can move into a discussion? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much for moving it. I'll now move into discussion, so may I have the relevant council officer forward, please? May you just please, your name and your title. Thank you.
Good morning, Kay Kavanagh, Manager, Environment and Sustainability.
Thank you. Would you like to run through this recommendation or this proposal?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the South East Queensland Fire and Biodiversity Consortium is a non-government consortium made up of representatives from a number of councils, utilities and government agencies. Council has been a member of this consortium for quite some time, from about 2000. They provide a lot of really good advice and support to council in regards to our fire management of natural areas, so our conservation estates and bushland reserves. And it creates that network across South East Queensland as well, so that we can share in what programs we're running each year between the different councils and who's delivering on those.
Okay. I guess my question is for yourself, Ms Kavanagh, or the CEO. Is it a sponsorship or is it a membership?
Essentially, it's classed as a membership that we contribute each year. It's based on population, so each council has a different contribution amount depending on the size of their local area.
Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't hog the room. Anyone else would like to ask a question? I guess what I'd be interested, because I see that's $7,700, which is within council delegations. I guess I'm very keen from a broader perspective how many of these type of memberships or sponsorships council have, not just in the environment area, Ms Kavanagh, but across the council. So it's probably something we could look at, so we can look at it more. Yep. Is there a policy holistically for sponsorship or membership?
Not so much on membership Not so much on membership of organisations. Sponsorship, which is all run through one funnel, but organisations that assist us in delivering our goal are generally dealt with separately. SEQ, Council of Mayors might be an example. LGAQ is another one. There's a range of organisations of which we're a member and we contribute a fee.
Yes, I'll just hand that over.
Through the Mayor, I just want to know, is the Enviro plan, does that include the money that's paid in by Tea Trees at Willowbank? Is that the environmental money that comes from them as well? Does it all go into that fund?
Through the Chair, no, the Enviro plan or Enviro levy is what's collected through the rates. So that's an annual contribution per rateable property.
No, thank you very much, Ms Kavanagh. I appreciate that. I think we take on board that we look at a policy. So we had, I think, Councillor Fechner moved this. Do we have someone who will second this membership of 7,700? Councillor Ireland is seconding that. I'll leave it open for people to speak for the motion. Speak against. I'll put that to the count and call it division. Those who support. I go around the room. I'll just see it's unanimous that all the councils have supported this and no one has voted in the negative or abstained. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 3, which is the proposed new trustee permit over reserve for recreation purposes, Anzac Park Sports and Recreation Club Incorporated, 1 Mill Street, Rosewood. Do I have someone who will move that? Councillor Doyle has moved that. I'll now open it up to discussion and call for the relevant council officer to come forward, please. May I ask you to give your name and title, please?
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Sonia Cooper. I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you. I'll open up to discussion. Does anyone have any questions?
Through the Mayor.
You can speak to the microphone.
So I have a couple of matters to raise just around consultation with the Anzac Park Sports and Recreation Club. Were there any concerns raised in relation to the changed agreement?
None that I'm aware of. Through the Mayor, none that I'm aware of. Councillor Doyle, as the report notes, Council did consult with the organisation over the requirement to enter into a more suitable agreement in line with the relevant legislation for the Trust land. And the advice I've received is that the organisation indicated their desire to continue with the management of the hall for a further 2-year period, which is what we're recommending here.
Okay, and so I guess this is the first example that has been presented to Council in relation to these groups and organisations that may have, to use the term, broadly, a general or, an exclusive use type arrangement in relation to council properties, whether it be a sporting field or a hall. I guess we probably do need to get our heads around how many of those exclusive use type arrangements we have, and generally the terms, if there is a consistent consistent terms under those agreements around the public facilities. An example I'm coming up with, public amenities, toilets, and whether they would be, if they're always made available to use by the public, or if they always fall under the exclusive use agreements with these types of organisations.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Doyle. I can do a couple of things. One would be to arrange for a more detailed briefing and set of information to come forward to you in order for this matter to proceed to Council. I can invite our Property Services Manager, Brett McGrath, to come forward to provide what expertise he is able to, and then perhaps we could follow up with the briefing subject to...
That would be terrific, and I think it's really important because we do have a lot of residents and members of the community that have lots of questions around these facilities.
Certainly.
I think, Ms. Good, that Councillor Doyle raises a very valid point. The community wanting to have more access to the facilities that their rates pay for as well. So this agreement, essentially, what are the main benefits of it?
So, as the report indicates, the organisation has been managing that particular hall since 2003. So I guess there would be opportunity for any concerns that might exist in relation to that organisation's management of the facility to be brought forward to Council, in which we could respond. However, at this time, there have been no formal concerns raised. In terms of the benefit, I guess, this organisation has, based on the available advice, been satisfactorily managing the hall and providing it to the community since that time. So we've got no reason to believe or act differently at this point in time. But as I said, very happy to provide a broader briefing on the kinds of arrangements that would exist over such premises.
Councillor Doyle, yes.
Sorry, just to, for the record, my comment and call for further information certainly has nothing to do with this specific organisation, and I'm probably not really speaking to any specific complaints or issues. It's more about Council potentially unlocking opportunities where there's some public facilities out there at a time where there are limited resources and the public are calling for, greater access.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to hear from Brett McGrath, our Property Services Manager, or...?
I'll just check with Councillor Milligan. Did you have any other questions? Or do you want to... Yes, wait for the microphone.
Thank you. Through the Chair, Ms Cooper, I did a bit of research, and my understanding in this particular instance is that there was an open-ended contract in place since 2003, and Council reviewed that, and on assessing risk, have decided the recommendation is to change the legal instrument in which the relationship is based, and put it to a trustee permit, which covers a smaller time period. With respect to the organisation that that Council are offering that trust permit to, is there future envisage within that 2-year term to open it to other organisations in the community to compete for the opportunity to provide those services, rather than it being assigned simply to an organisation that has done it for some time?
So,
I'll probably say...
Sorry?
Did you wish to answer?
No, after you, Mayor.
I'll just say it's probably up to us to decide that, Councillor Milligan, just to see...
I would just clarify that, as I've been briefed, while the organisation has been managing the operation of the hall since 2003, it was in September 2008, just a minor point there, that the contract was entered into. So prior to that time, there wasn't a contract. Since September 2008, indeed, a contract was entered into, but with the expertise of our Property Services Manager and the team, as the report indicates, we're noting that a contract isn't the appropriate instrument for a continuing arrangement. Hence, pursuant to the Land Act 1994, we're recommending a trustee permit, as you've noted, just for the 2-year period of time. I will invite Brett McGrath, if I may, Mayor.
Sorry, through the Chair. My question was opposed specifically to
Beyond.
integrity and transparency
Yep.
with respect to we need to provide opportunity to the broader
And I think
community.
Councillor goes on to what the Deputy Mayor was talking about, the fact that let's have a bit of a broader understanding of the landscape so we can have an open and fair process, so everyone's having treated equally. Yep.
And Brett would be able to speak to the opportunity to go into an open process in relation to this matter, if you'd like to hear from Brett.
If you'd like to.
If I pass it to him,
Please,
thank you.
Please do. Just please introduce yourself and give us your title, please.
Brett McGrath, Property Services Manager. So just to answer Councillor Milligan's question there. So this was basically to tidy up the existing agreement, put it on the trustee permit. We went and approached the current operator and spoke to them about their intentions, and they sort of indicated that they only wanted to be there for another 2 years because their membership was declining. They're still managing the facility. They had gone through a bit of hardship where they'd lost a couple of tenants or people in there from recent events, and then they've actually put some new tenants in there as well, so that are using the facility on a short-term basis. But the intention is during this 2-year period we'll sort of assess what the best model is to operate that facility, whether it be council control it and we issue through permits, or we go through a tender process and get one sole operator that operates the facility. So,
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, sorry, CEO?
If I can comment, it's ultimately up to the council.
Microphone's off.
Sorry, thank you. It's ultimately up to the council to determine the approach it wants to take in these sort of situations, and we can create either a general policy position, or we can put the suite of leases that are coming up in the next 12 months to council, and they can determine which, if any, that they would like to see put out competitively. So it's really an approach. Some councils choose to roll over trustee permanents, say for a local sporting association, for a long period of time, because that particular, is a very strong representative of the community. Some others, because the organisation that manages a particular facility may not necessarily have a deep linkage to that area, will choose to go out to the market again and see if somebody else wishes to or is able to do that, and then we'd assess who we believe could deliver the service in a better way. But that's very much the bailiwick of the council.
Are there any other questions? No? Thank you, Mr McGrath. I appreciate you coming to the floor. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Marnie Doyle had moved this. May I ask for someone to second this motion? Go around. Councillor Milligan. I'll now call on people to speak for, against. I'll go straight to the vote then. Those who support this recommendation for this particular trustee to proceed, please raise your hand. And I look around the room and it's unanimous, for all the councils have voted in support of item 3. Thank you very much. Move on to item 4. We now move on to fees and charges for animal registration permits. This is something that's an item I believe that comes up once a year. Discuss the permits, the cost for animal permits. To continue the discussion, may I ask for someone to move the recommendation put forward? I see Councillor Doyle has put her hand up to move it. I'll now open it up for discussion. May I ask for the relevant council officer to come forward to discuss this particular item? You know the drill, Peter.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Peter Tabulo, General Manager of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Could you please give us a brief on this?
Yep, sure. Mayor, you're correct in terms of this is an annual report that comes to Council, probably out of session to some degree with respect to the other fees and charges. It is brought forward early in the cycle simply because we want to get and historically we have got the issuing of the dog registrations out come the 1st of July, so early in the financial year, rather than waiting for fees and charges to be adopted as part of the budget and have that go through that process. Council has approximately 32,000 animals registered, giving us a revenue of about $1.7 million thereabouts. It is proposed this year to increase the fees and charges by approximately 2%. There might be a bit of give and take in that number just for rounding purposes on some of them, but on average across the board, it's 2%. We've also proposed this year to extend the payment due date to August, so to give that additional time for residents to pay their dog registration, given these circumstances that everyone's in at this point in time. We haven't made any recommendation to council with respect to whether you wanted to go any further with respect to consideration under the COVID environment. Probably from an officer's perspective, the registration of one's animal is not really an impact of a pandemic or a closing of business. Yes, it might have some financial impact on individuals, but at the end of the day, it's an obligation that people have with respect to having a dog in Ipswich City Council and being expected to pay registration for that animal.
Okay. Open up for discussion and questions. Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Doyle. Can we just have it a bit closer to Councillor Doyle to make sure that... Thank you.
If I could speak through the Mayor. Just wanting to speak to the issue around responsible pet or dog ownership. I guess, and I'm sure fellow councillors are in the same boat since starting approximately 4 weeks ago. I have been inundated with questions around, responsible pet ownership complaints and registration. So are you able to speak to council's philosophy around, I guess, supporting responsible pet ownership and registration and versus penalising those that are irresponsible in the community? Obviously there is the discount period. If you pay your registration fee on time or before the due date, and there's penalties for those who don't register their dog, and if that dog escapes and is picked up by council. But I guess members of the community have been, wanting to come up with a little more different ideas, creative ideas to reward responsible pet ownership.
So the message with respect to registration has generally been around, if it's there for the owner's protection and insurance, that if the dog escapes and it's picked up, then we can trace the dog back to the owner. Excuse me. Councils over many years have also explored a variety of programs around education to try and present the positive message to the community about being responsible dog owners, and then why council has a registration fee and the like. And that education program can deal with things from officers going into the schools and talking to the students at a young age to get them understanding, and in the education area, if you educate your children, it normally has a positive effect in the family with the messengers going forward. So councils have explored that in the past. There's been a range of other incentives councils have tried with respect to discounting fees and trying to match that up to responsible ownership. But historically, in my experience, I've never seen too much success in that arrangement. We have a fee in place. It's there to cover the basic costs of the administration of the officers doing the inspections and the rounds. We have a contract with the RSPCA with respect to managing the pound, so that comes at approximately $1.3 million every year. So you can see there's a lot of money involved in animal management, and so it's getting that fine balance between ensuring that the user pays to some degree, but also having that broader education community awareness program, which I think we do in part. Whether we need to do more, we can be guided by council through the next period of time.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, Mr. Tabular, it's a bit like when you're getting a driver's licence each year, you don't get a discount if you didn't get a speeding fine or something. It's a fee that
Good
is
analogy,
paid.
madam.
Yeah. Just going through, so are there any other questions on? Just going through this, something I have been asked a few times on the campaign trail. Why are the fees different for a desexed dog as opposed to an entire or an intact dog?
The incentive is for the owners to have their dog desexed, so that if the dog gets out and does something with another dog, then the problem is not perpetuated by having litters and pups around the city.
So it's an incentive to desex your
Correct.
dog. Okay, thank you. And just going through this, I can see the pricing, Mr Tabulo, that the introductory dog registration for pensioners and for others has not increased at all.
That's correct.
The dog registration for desexed dogs is going up $1 a year.
Correct.
The registration for an entire or an intact dog has gone up $4 per year. And the dog registration for desexed dogs for pensioners is $1 a year. And for an intact or entire dog for pensioners is $2 per year. That's correct?
Correct.
Yep. What about guide dogs or assistance dogs? Are there any registration fees for them?
Council's policy, Mayor Harding, has been that they are free of charge, and that continues.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Yes, Councillor Johnnick, and we'll need the microphone to Councillor Johnnick.
Do we have any?
So I'll just get you started again, Councillor.
Sorry, through the mayor. Can we? Do we have any charges that relate to cats?
There are some charges relating to cats and the keeping of three or more, I think the number is, but as a general registration of cats, we do not register cats as we do with dogs.
Okay, and do we have a fee that we need to pay to any other governing body for any number of cats that we have?
No.
No? Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Milligan, I'll just wait for the microphone to get around to Councillor Milligan.
Thank you. Through Chair, Mr Tabulo, I note that as Mayor Harding pointed out, the scale of the different increases in the proposed increase, and that we're quite clear on the fact that these fees are provision for services that council provide, and it's a clear service that council provides in the form of animal management within the community.
Correct.
And the community living together needs that management. I have had some or seen some commentary within the community that with the current health situation and ensuing economic forecast that possibly we could do more to assist. However, this is a department that is funded by these fees, and as it is a service that we can't really offer any more rebate than what we have in terms of minimising increase and extending the due date. Is that correct?
Yes, but at the end of the day, Councillor, the decision is ultimately yours collectively. If you wanted to move that there'd be no rate increase in the animal registration this year, that's a decision you can make. You're aware of the implication in terms of a slight revenue loss?
What would be the revenue loss?
I don't think we actually said it in the report, Mayor, but it's the 2% on $1.7 million. Mr CEO's got a calculated name.
About $38,000. So, Councillor Kunzelman?
When I was campaigning, there was a request from people that they'd be allowed to register their dog for life, or for an extended period at least, if not, and that it didn't come up every year. Has the council ever considered that?
Through you, Mayor, I don't know if this council's ever considered it. I know in previous councils that I've been involved in, that policy decision has been debated amongst the councillors. We can certainly bring a paper back to council if you're of that mind. The outcome of those previous conversations that I've been involved in, the councils have tended to go back to annual registration. It just seems to be a clearer and more, I suppose, user-friendly and user-pays type response.
Thank you.
But we can explore it if that's the direction of council.
Thank you.
Councillor Madsen?
Through the man, is that on?
It looks red on there. Is it? What's this? So I don't know. Has anyone here got headphones they can hear? In that case, just very gently.
Through the Mayor, just in regards to the possibility of lifetime registrations for dogs, has a previous debate point been the variance in life expectancy that different breeds have? Some dogs will live for 20 years, others will be lucky to make 8. I would call into question the equity of such a program. And that's a point of worth consideration when looking at it, isn't it?
Through the Mayor, yes, it would be. That particular point hasn't necessarily been raised from what I can recall in the times I've dealt with the matter. It's been more around just the administration of a once-only registration, and then how is that monitored and reviewed and followed up at periods of time. And getting back to your point, yes, do you go back and check on someone at 5-year, 10-year? What's the obligation when the dog has passed away for that registration to be cancelled or what? So it's complex, and hence I think, as I said earlier, why the councils have tended back to annual registration as the simplest form of administration.
Councillor Madsen, you're more than welcome to move a motion for a report on lifetime membership. If you wish, you don't have to, but if that's something you wish to explore now at a later date.
I will embark upon further consideration of whether we want to pursue that. It is something that's been raised in the community, lifetime registration as opposed to yearly.
Yep.
And now the conversation, Mayor, has been raised here. I can certainly get some policy research done and present it at some point in time.
Thank you, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Tabula. Are there any other questions? No? Thank you, Mr Tabula. I'll move back to the recommendation and move to it. We have a mover who was Deputy Mayor who moved it. Do I have someone who will second it? Councillor Kunzelman. Thank you very much. Those who wish to speak in the affirmative? Against? Oh, sorry, in the affirmative. Sorry, wish to speak about it?
Oh, no, sorry.
No? Against? Who wish to speak? Okay, we'll move to a vote then. Those who support the fee increases that are listed in this paper and the recommendation here, for. I'll look around the room and it's unanimous. So there's no one against or abstaining. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5. Amendment of Council's Meeting Procedures Policy. I'll ask for someone to move this, then we can go on to discussion. Councillor Madsen has moved this. Thank you very much. May I now open for discussion? Ask for the relevant General Manager. Thank you, Ms Cooper. Thank you. Would you mind just outlining the changes and why? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Sonia Cooper, again, General Manager, Corporate Services. So the report to committee proposes several changes to the council meeting procedures policy. Some of them are minor in nature, but I'll speak to them all. The first is simply to change the order of the standard agenda. Under 8.4, Order of Business, we're proposing that the declarations of interest move to sit immediately prior to the confirmation of minutes to allow for all declarations to be declared, of course, prior to other matters arising on the agenda. The point B is another minor change really to correct the previous work that was done to replace the term standing orders throughout the policy. There were some references to standing orders that weren't picked up and replaced with the words meeting procedures. So that's a procedural...
Just to make this easier for everyone in the room, but also those who are live streaming, we're looking at page 153. That's the track changes of the meeting policy. It's probably the easiest one to look at. So, sorry, back over to you, Ms Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're now up to page, I think, 156, I think.
I'm actually working from the report,
Yes.
but I can try and jump between. So I'm on page 121 now of the report.
Yes.
At section C. This is a recommended change in relation to the section 9.8 of the policy, titled Method of Taking Vote, where the recommendation is to amend the wording, stating that all voting at council meetings, including committee meetings, must be recorded in the minutes of the meeting with the names of the councillors who voted for and against each motion or amendment. And this is indeed a change that's been made in relation to your own requirements, Mayor, so that we have transparency in relation to the division, and also in relation to the method of taking the vote, in line with section 260 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. We're seeking to align with that provision of the regulation to clarify that voting must be taken in the affirmative or in the negative, and that a failure to vote, as is the wording in the regulation, will be taken as a vote in the negative. We have done some, and this is effectively a recommendation, as I said, to align with the regulation and to change past practice where there has been a use of a term abstain from the vote. So we're very much recommending to align with the current legislation in that regard. So to cease the recording of abstain as an option, and rather that votes must be in the affirmative or the negative, and a failure to vote, as it's worded, is to be taken and recorded and counted in the negative. We have done some research on this point, though, in making this recommendation in the report, and we've looked at the procedure of 3 other councils in Queensland and looked at their practice, and we've also taken some advice from the Department of Local Government, Racing and Multicultural Affairs in this regard. The department has advised that our proposed change here is correct, and that votes should be counted, of course, in the affirmative or the negative, but it has indicated that if there is a councillor who fails to vote, that could be recorded in the minutes as such, that particular councillor failed to vote and that this vote was counted in the negative. So on that basis, we would proceed that way with council's consideration of that at the meeting, and we would record the minutes that way.
I'm going to just hold on. I think Councillor Tully would like to speak to this. Listen, yes.
Is that right? Through the Mayor. I had a look through minutes of other councils in Queensland. Some of them are very interesting, actually, where people declare MPIs and stay in the meeting and a whole range of other things. It's on the public record. But, for example, the Gold Coast, they've got the most extensive method of voting, or memorialising the vote. They got 4 against, abstained, absent and did not vote. So and that's on multiple recent occasions. Gympie Regional Council records, uses the word abstained, and I think I've said previously that's in the generic sense of failing, you've abstained, you didn't vote. North Burnett Council, they recognise abstentions as well. So the amendment, and I've got a copy for Vicky if she needs it, but it's pretty simple. I think we can cover this by the end of paragraph 9.8.6, which currently reads, the council is taken to a vote, and this will be recorded in the minutes accordingly, to add the words, including the fact that the councillor failed to vote. So that in 9.8.6, it would correctly reflect the regulation that the councillor has taken to have voted in the negative, and that this will be recorded in the minutes accordingly, comma, including the fact that the councillor failed to vote. I'm pretty sure that that covers what would be required. But in proposing that amendment, could I just ask, has any consideration now been given to the need for the proposed reworded paragraph 9.8.7, given that we've got 9.8.4? Like 9.8.4 is effectively calling for a division up front, and 9.8.7 in some respects is possibly redundant. So I'll just ask the CEO if...
Let me get to it.
We're all
So
scrolling.
it's 9.8.4 that the chairperson must call all in favour and indicate their objection, and then 9.8.7, which is the current wording, is calling for a division, but it's effectively a policy.
I suspect you're correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I'll include in the motion that my amendment that paragraph 9, the proposed paragraph 9.8.7 be deleted and the following paragraphs be renumbered accordingly.
What I might do is, because there's a number of amendments in this policy, is have Ms Cooper run through all the proposed amendments, and I think then we can table up all the changes and tweaks and things like that.
Yes.
We'll do that. Thank you, Ms Cooper. I'll get you to continue on.
I believe I had covered the summary of points, Mayor. However, I'm at your disposal. We can certainly do a run through just to be crystal clear. But
it's in the pack, I think. Thank you very much. I think we're right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll leave it to you to
well,
propose an amendment.
I think you've got the main motion, so I'll propose that I'll move it as one amendment.
Yes.
That as worded
9.8.6 including the fact that...
include those additional words, and then 9.8.7, the proposed 9.8.7.
Yeah, and it would be removed, doesn't it? It's
be deleted,
doesn't need to be reworded.
9.8.
Oh, no, the other paragraphs need to be renumbered,
renumbered,
yeah.
Okay.
Understood.
So
I'll formally move that as an amendment.
So we're moving not the entire motion, it's just that amendment that Councillor Tully has put forward. So obviously, do I have a seconder for that? So Councillor Isla has seconded that. Anyone wish to speak for or against that? I'll put that to the vote by division. All those in favour? I look around the room and it is unanimous for that amendment to that recommendation to proceed. And no one's voted in the negative. Thank you. We'll now move actually on to, I'll give you time, Vicky, to update the recommendation so we can then vote on it. So we're moving that the changes, who originally moved that? Councillor Madsen. We're moving that the fact that of this recommendation for the meeting procedures policies, including the amendment that's put forward. Do I have someone who will second that? So Deputy Mayor, Councillor Doyle has seconded that. Those who wish to speak for or against? No, I'll move straight to the vote by division. Those who support that for it, please raise your hand. Around the room, and it's unanimous. Every councillor has voted in support of that. No one in the negative. And I no longer have to call a division now.
No, that hasn't gone through council.
No.
When we go next week.
Well, actually, next week we'll still have to call
Let's call it, yes. Call the division till then. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 6, which is the exercises delegation report. So this was just for the council to note it. So may I have someone move to note the contents of this report? So Councillor Ireland has moved it. I'll bring forward the relevant council officer to come forward in case there is discussion. Noted that all delegations have already been exercised with this report. Please state your name and title, please.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Brett Davey, Manager Development Planning. So, as noted, this report is a one for receive and note, a listing of the decisions that have been made under delegation, so council officers using the powers delegated by council and the CEO.
Right, thank you. May I ask, Mr Davey, with COVID coming along, has there been an impact to the number of development applications that have come through, or for you to exercise your delegation?
Not that we're seeing yet. The officers have actually been probably busier than they've been for a long time. I think that's because there is still a pipeline there, and a lot of the consultants are trying to do things to get things through the system, and we're trying to do the same. So we're working quite hard to exercise as much as we can.
Okay. Certainly industry groups that advocate for development incentives have been writing to us all, to us councillors, asking what incentives asking for incentives to support the local construction industry. I think maybe it'd be a good idea if we workshop that maybe in a future to look at that, to make sure that the construction industry is kept busy and local jobs are kept.
Yep.
As well.
Agree.
Just going through that very long list, which we only got on Friday, there's a high degree of delegations to officers. Could you explain what triggers when something comes to council, for the councils to decide?
Yep. So we categorise applications as they get lodged, and categories 1 and 2 typically are dealt with by officers under delegation. Categories 3 also generally by officers, but there are some exceptions. So if you have a volume of submissions, that would trigger. If you have something that's particularly controversial, and that's something to consider by the CEO and the General Manager, that could be elevated to council for decision. And then there are matters of conflict or potential perceived conflict. So we've got one on the agenda today for an application that's on council's behalf.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions of Mr Davey? No, thank you very much, Mr Davey. Appreciate that. Knowing that we are just to note the contents of this report, we had Councillor Ireland move. Do I have a seconder? So Councillor Milligan, second that. Anyone wish to speak to the affirmative or negative? No, we'll move straight to a vote, and I'll call for a division. All those who support this recommendation, please raise your hand. I see that it's unanimous. Every single councillor has voted for that. No one has voted in the negative. I think we'll now move on to item 7, which is the court action status report. Again, this is another one that is a report that is for the council to note. May I ask for someone to move that recommendation to note this report? Councillor Johnick, thank you very much. I'll now call on the relevant council officer to discuss this. Thank you, Mr Davey, again.
Back again, councillors. So this report is again a receive and note, a listing out the current planning appeals that we have afoot, with a very brief update. Just to note that the updates are brief in order not to breach any confidentiality or any court rules regarding the disclosure of current appeals, but they give you an update of generally where they are. Noting the first one on the list is to be removed for the next round. It's one that we were successful on.
Do we have any questions of Mr Davey?
Yes, I
yes,
do.
Councillor Tully.
On respect to
Can I just get you to bring the microphone a bit closer?
Sorry, yeah, through the Mayor. Yes, I do, but the questions probably would raise issues that you've just identified in relation to the court action, so it might be appropriate to move into a closed session.
You wish to move into something that's confidential?
Yes, I'll so move.
Okay. Do I have someone who will support? So Councillor Tolley has moved that we move to a closed session to discuss a confidential matter. And
Sorry, yeah. I've forgotten some of those niceties.
And a lawyer like yourself, Councillor Tolley.
Matters of a legal nature.
Thank you. And I have a seconder, Councillor Kunzelman. Those who wish to speak for or against? Yes, so we need a... Councillor Mads would like to speak for it. Apologies, we did briefly turn off live streaming. We're back on. So, Councillor Mads, could I get you to start from the beginning?
I just wanted to clarify for those at home that going into a closed session is for legal matters, and confidential items do arise at council. I think it's quite unanimous, the support for transparency reforms among this group, and we're committed to sharing with the public what we can. Matters of legal nature need to be discussed confidentially at times, and that's why this is happening today.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Anyone else wish to speak for or against this moving into a closed session for legal matters? No, I'll put it to a vote and I'll ask for a division. All those who in favour, raise your hand. I'll look around the room and it is unanimous. We will now close this session to discuss the legal and confidence matters